प्रसाद सबों ने लिए के कही पौड़ने की अरज हम आए त पौड़ने हमारी तो और गरज हम आए त पौड़ने हमारी तो और गरज प्रसाद सबों ने लिए के बोले श्री प्राणनाथ प्यारे की जय सदगुरु महाराज की जय कृष्ण कन्हैया लाल की जय प्रणाम. So on yesterday's discourse we talked about Jairam Kansara. And as our host said, Mahamati Prananaji reawakens Jairam Kansara because even being the disciple of Satguru Maharaj, witnessing the Leelas of Sri Krishna, listening to the divine discourse of Satguru Maharaj, is again engaged in the works of Maya. He is busy with his business of home appliances, making kitchen utensils, and as Mahamati Prananaji finds himself in Deep Bandar and meets Ram Kansara, he is not happy with the state he is in. Because, like I said, the work of awakening is not only the responsibility of those wearing white loincloths and white kurta, those enlightened with Tartam Sagar from one of the training centers, spiritual centers of Sri Krishna Pranami faith, but it is the responsibility of us all. Because we equally made promise to Raji Maharaj in Paramnam that if I'm forgetful, please awaken me, and then if you are forgetful, I'll be the one awakening you. We promised unequivocally, all of us, in one voice, that hey Raji Maharaj, we would never forget you. We would not be forgetful of you. We would not be forgetful of the divine Leelas of Paramdham. We would not be forgetful of our original abode, and we would not be forgetful of ourselves. It says, when Mahamati Prananaji gets to Jairam Kansara, he is critical of him. He criticizes Jairam Kansara for being forgetful. He criticizes him for not being able to communicate, not being there in Nautanpuri Dham when Satguru passes away, not awakening a single Sundar Sahib, although he is enlightened with the divine intellect, the awakened consciousness of Tartam. As Mahamati Prananaji says, the awakening of Sundar Sahib Ji is the responsibility of all. Jako mile Tartam soi prakasa kare. Those awakened with Tartam, they would enlighten others as well. They are to enlighten others. They have been assigned that responsibility of awakening each one of the other ones that are yet to be awakened. So Mahamati Prananaji gets to Jairam Kansara and begins criticizing him. And after a long day of discourse and criticism, as Mahamati Prananaji continues to pounce on Jairam Kansara for his forgetfulness, Jairam Kansara has the food ready for Prananaji and the friends that have come with him to Dibandar. So he asked Prananaji to take some rest, get some warm food, warm meal, and then take some rest. And for that, Mahamati Prananaji says, Hamana I I have not come here to rest. Rather, I have come here to awaken souls like you who have been forgetful of the promises that have been made in Paramdham. So I have not come here to rest. I'm here to awaken the souls as you, souls just like you. And Prananaji talks about Brajalila, Prananaji talks about Ras Lila, and how, despite being incognizant of ourselves, Raji Maharaj, that we could not see in Sri Krishna, we didn't know that the Sri Krishna was the Lord Supreme and we were the consorts. Yet, when Sri Krishna played the flute, we left our families, we left everything behind. Gopada Bachakar Gopiya Nikasi, as we always say, how we got to the universe created by Yogmaya and participated in the divine Leela of Ras. So संबत 1722 दीप पधारे श्री राजा 2 बरस तहाँ रहे सब पुरे मनोरथ काज. It was the year 1722 when Mahamati Prananath finds himself in Deep Bandar, and he stays there for 2 years, awakens Jairam Kansara. And after all these criticisms, all this reminder of the promises made in Paramdham, Jairam Kansara begins crying, shedding tears for his forgetfulness, and he apologizes to Prananaji and all the Sundar Satsi there that, hey Prananaji, indeed I have been forgetful. I should not have done what I have done. So then he takes the resolution that he would not be engaged in the business any longer. He would be doing the work of awakening himself. So as he asked for Prananaji for any role that he could give, Prananaji assigns him the responsibility of writing the biography of Satguru Maharaj, because he was one of the disciples of Satguru Maharaj and he knew Satguru Maharaj a little deeper than probably anybody else. So Jairam Kansara wrote the biography, or another Beetak, which is known to the Pranami community as Karunavati Beetak. The Beetak written by Karunavati, that is the name of spirit in Jairam Kansara, Karunavati, and the Beetak was written, and that is how he began doing the work of awakening himself. So, as it is said that when you start doing some noble work, you find people criticizing you. Shreyamsi Bahuvignani, as it is stated, when you start doing the noble work, people initially begin to criticize you. People begin to undermine what you are doing. And if you still continue your efforts, then people begin to oppose you, and sometimes violently. And when you keep doing what you are doing, when you keep doing your noble work, finally people realize the greatness in you. So such was the case with Lord Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. When he started preaching the understanding that he had, people started criticizing, undermining him for giving wrong direction to the youths, to the kids. And finally, when he kept pursuing, kept reminding people the ways of living this life happily, then he became the Lord, he became the God for many, he became the philosopher, he became the motivational personality that could motivate thousands of people at once. So Gautam Buddha was regarded later on, when he persevered with his teachings to the world. So Mahamati Prananath, when he started preaching the divine understanding he had of the Lord Supreme, the understanding of the beyond, then people became critical. People started beginning criticizing Sadguru Mahamati Prananath. And there were some religious scholars who thought that with this new saint in town, they are going to lose some of their disciples. So they began looking for ways that they could chase Prananath and his team away from Deep Bandar. So one day, some of the followers of Vaishnava traditions started, they filed a complaint. There was a Chugalkhor, the talebearer. So they asked the talebearer to go to the ruler of Deep Bandar. India was ruled by different countries back then. So they asked the talebearer to go and complain to the government there. And as it happened that a lot of Sundar Satsi got scared. They got scared. The talebearer found someone around the palace there and started complaining that there is a new saint who is misguiding the youths and all that. And then the guy that was roaming around the palace said, "Have you seen him doing that? Have you listened to his discourse? Is he really misguiding people?" And the talebearer says, "That's what I heard, that's what I was told, so I'm filing the complaint." And the guy said, "If you don't know that it is the truth, how dare you talk bad about a saint in the town. So the man that was there, he was not willing to listen to the complaint, the false accusation against Mahamati Prananath. And the talebearer, the Chugalko, returned. And it is stated that the man that the talebearer was complaining against Prananath disappeared, and it was the God in disguise. But it is believed that it was the Lord Supreme in disguise. Because as we say that when you are too deeply engaged in your spiritual pursuit and you have been given the grace of God, then nothing can go wrong against those people. So Mahamati Prananath is doing the noble work of awakening Sundar Sadhji. So nothing was going to happen to him or the awakened Sundar Sadhs. Yeah, but it so happened that all the Sundar Sadhji began running away because they thought that when the emperor, when the ruler of Deepbandar would know that these are the disciples of Prana, these are the disciples of this new saint, then they would run into trouble. So they started hiding, some in the caves, some ran away to a different city, and only Jairam Kansara was there to stand his ground. He felt that he has been forgetful enough that now when the moment is there for him to stand in the preservation of Dharma, then he would stand his ground, he would hold his ground. So he did not run away, but all the Sundar Sadhji that were awakened, they ran away. And when they eventually found out that the ruler did not consider the complaint as real, and then everything was fine, then all the Sundar Sadhji started coming back, and then started talking, started gossiping about what they went through. They were like, oh, I was in the cave and I was in a different town. I thought I was going to run into trouble. And Prananath realized that this Sundar Sadhji, despite being awakened with the transcendent understanding, they are not ready to stand. They are not ready to fight against the aggressors. They are not ready to stand their ground in the preservation of Dharma. Mahamati Prananath says in Kirantanam, in the book of Kirantan, that Satabrata Dharana Supaliye Jiha Lagi Ubi Deha Aneka Bigana Padejo Mathe Tohena Mukiye Saneha. In the path of righteousness, so long as you are alive, you should hold your ground. And you may run into different troubles, but despite the challenges, you should not be hesitant, you should not be afraid, you should hold your ground, you should be strong enough, you should be brave enough to stand your ground and always be with someone who is showing you the path of righteousness. So Mahamati Prananath realized that this Sundar Sadhji, it's about time for him to awaken other Sundar Sadhjis. It's about time to leave the town of Deepbandar. And it so happened that Baiju Maharani, Radha and Rupa, among other ladies that were serving the Sundar Sadhs, were one day going to the ocean to do their laundry, wash their clothes and all that. And then they were kidnapped by the dacoits from the Arab countries. The robbers were there, they kidnapped Teiskumbari and few other Sundar Sadhs along with kids, and they took them to the port of Muscat, also known as Muscat Bandar. So they were serving Prananath and all the other Sundar Sadhji, but it so happened Ai Baiji Bandame Taba Chale Chodavane Tinna, and Mahamati Prananath realized that he needs to do something to have them released. However, they asked for a ransom worth 70,000 Arabian currency. So that was a lot of money. So Prananath was not sure how he could arrange so much cash to get Teiskumbari and all the other Sundar Sadhs and kids released from these dacoits. Mahamati Prananath realized that it's about time that he goes to Muscat in the process of releasing this Baijo Maharani, Tejkumbari and other kids, Rupa, Radha and all those that are kidnapped by the Arabian people, the dacoits, the looters, the robbers. However, it was back then, as we know that the ships would have to wait for the proper wind movement. They did not have the engine ones. They were not run by the steam engines or any kinds of engines or the motors. So Mahamati Prananaji could not make it to Muscat right away. So Mahamati Prananaji instead finds himself in Thattanagar. So from Lathi Bandar, one of the places, one of the ports, he gets to Thattanagar. And in Thattanagar, he meet a lot of disciples of Satguru Maharaj. And he realized that it is a place where he would also awaken some of the Sundar Sadji. And then he starts getting in the discourse, awakening Sundar Sadhs. And as he gets there in Thattanagar, he finds many Sundar Sadhs, and from these Sundar Sadhs, he finds out that there is a saint called Chintamani in Thattanagar. He is a scholar. He is a follower of Kabir tradition, and he has more than 500 disciples. He does a lot of miracles and magic. So a lot of people are so devoted to him because they believe in the magic and miracles. They are not deeper into devotion, they are not deeper into understanding, but whenever they get to Chintamani's discourse and they get to the temple of Chintamani, then they get so engaged because he performs different miracles and magic. So Mahamati Prananaji, as he heard about Chintamani, he realized that it could be possible that he could awaken him. Sune sadhu Chintamani rahe kabir ke dharma, kaha kije didar tinaka dekhe charaja unake karama. Mahamati Prananaji said to other Sundar Sadhji that he wants to listen to the discourse of Chintamani Sadhu Chintamani. He wants to know about him. And with few Sundar Sadhji, he finds himself at the temple of Chintamani. As soon as they both meet, Mahamati Prananaji through Laldas, says, "Dekhata hi sukha paya, waha kahane laga baat." So both of them felt really good to see each other because, as we said, whenever two saints meet, whenever two smart people meet, when two intellectuals meet, then they both benefit from each other. So as soon as Mahamati meets Chintamani, Mahamati Prananaji greets him, and Chintamani asks Prananaji promptly, "Oh saint, where have you come from? If you know more about the scriptures, if you know more, please share me your knowledge. I want to hear your discourse. And if you feel that I have more in me, then I would be doing the discourse and you listen." And Prananaji says, "I'm here to receive. I'm not here to share." Although Mahamati Prananaji knows, Mahamati Prananaji is awakened with the transcendent understanding of Dharma. He knows the secrets of both Vedic and Abrahamic scriptures, both the Vedas and the Katib traditional scriptures, like the Bible and the Quran. He is enlightened with the transcendent understanding. He is ready to listen because he does not have the sense of ego in him. A lot of times when we have something, when we are good at something, then we begin to feel that we are invincible. And we live with that pride, we live with that ego. And Mahamati Prananaji is against it. Mahamati Prananaji says those who live with ever-building ego in them, even the Lord Supreme cannot awaken that person. So as soon as Mahamati Prananaji says that he is ready to listen to the discourse of Chintamani and receive the understanding that he has, Chintamani says, "Okay, tell me, what do you want to witness? What do you want to see? What do you want to know?" If you want, I will have you the glimpse of Lord Vishnu. I will have you the glimpse of Sesnarayana, and I can have you experience the different spiritual experiences. Mahamati Prananath says, I'm not here to witness your magical powers. I'm not here to see the miracles that you can perform. I'm here to listen to the transcendent understanding that I heard that you have. Mahamati Prananath says, साधो किहेर कही करामत ये दुनिया ती तरह से झूठी दृष्टि बांधी झूठसों ताथे दिल न लगत क्यों ऐसा से. Mahamati Prananath is against these miracles and magic. Let me give you a practical example of the lesser significance of these magical powers and miracles. Suppose you go to a person with some magical power. He can just create a cup of coffee just out of the blue, and he gives you a coffee every day with that magical power. And for that, you have to greet him, and you gotta pay him some money and things of that nature. You gotta submit yourself to that person. However, the day that you know that, let's say, that cup of coffee can be found in a particular store, let's say in Starbucks or a gas station, then you do not have to bow down to that person. You can go get it yourself. So you do not have to rely on somebody. So Mahamati Prananath is against the miracles. He is for the understanding. As long as you have the understanding of yourself, as long as you have the self-awakening, then all things fall into places. And you know how to lead a happy life without relying on somebody else. So he is against these miracles because these miracles go away with that person passing away. But the understanding of the beyond, self-realization, the knowledge of the self remains forever. So Mahamati Prananath says, I do not believe in these miracles. I'm rather here to listen to you, listen from you about the Lord Supreme. I'm here to listen to you about the soul. So please tell me about soul and the Lord Supreme. A lot of people run after these people who can perform miracles. Mahamati Prananath says that's not a right thing to do because they are temporary, they are transient. What we rather need to do is find an understanding that we can have, that can release us from this karmic cycle of birth and death, reincarnation, the understanding that can help us lead to the path of self-realization. So he asked Chintamani to awaken him, or to give him the understanding of the beyond. He does not want any miracles. He doesn't want to have a glimpse of Lord Vishnu or Sesnarayana. He wants to have an understanding of the Lord Supreme. And Kabir started his discourse as Mahamati Prananath asked him to. And he quoted. He started on the discourse of Kabir Sahib, one of the medieval scholar, Vedic scholar, Kabir, who also had something to say about Quran and the teachings of Islam. He said, Kaudi te hira bhaya, hira te bhaya lal, Ada bhakta Kabir hai, pura bhakta kamal. So he said, Kabir was a half devotee, and his son Kamal was full devotee of the God. So Kabir Sahib is considered by many, or his followers, as the Lord Supreme himself. And Chintamani was the follower of Kabir tradition. It is believed that one day Kabir's son Kamal was just roaming around, and he reaches the garden of the king, and he was just riding his horse. And he was a beautiful kid, Kamal. So once the prince saw that kid, he said, "Who are you? Your clothes are ragged. Your clothes are not clean. They're all torn apart. Why are you here?" So Kamal introduces himself to the prince, and he says that we are very poor. We live in a small hut. We do not have much wealth with us. So the prince becomes kind to the kid, to Kamal, and he gave him some clothes and things like that from the palace. And they gradually became friends. The prince was a little older in age, but they became friends. And the prince one day asked Kamal that if he could come to his home, to his house. For that, Kamal said he kind of rejected that request because he is not willing to do that, because he lives in a small hut versus the prince who lives in a palace. So they are friends, and then Kamal is unwilling to show his house to the prince. And one day, when the prince insisted that he wanted to see the house, then he said, "I live in a small hut. You do not probably want to see it." So what the prince does is he builds a house for Kamal and his family, including his father, Kabir. So Kabir Sahab was out for a few months for a satsang, for a religious discourse. And when he found out the small hut that he had was turned into a big mansion, and when he came back, he realized what his son had done. So he was not actually happy with it. And that is why Kabir says, "Aadha Vakta Kabir hai, Pura Vakta Kamal." So Kabir said, "I am the half devotee." And when he meant that he was the half devotee of the world, because he had to make some money, he had to make his living, and he used to do some work with the clothes. He would make some shirts and pants and other clothes for people. So with that, he would make his living, and rest of his time he would engage in the devotion of the Lord, while Kamal was so engaged in the world. So he quoted, Chintamani quoted this doha, this verse from Kabir, and stated that Kamal is rather greater among the father and the son. And Mahamati Prananath says that is not what Kabir meant. कहाँ मजल कबीर की केती अकल कमाल, तौल देखो दोनों को किनका कैसा हाल. Mahamati Prananath says, "Hey Chintamani, you got it all wrong. Kaha majal Kabir? You are talking about the intellect of Kabir. Kabir is way high up here. And Kamal, Kiti Akala Kamal, he does not even know anything about the Lord. Tola dekho dono ko, measure their intellect, and you would find out the difference between those two." Mahamati Prananath has given a special place among other religious scholars for Kabir. He is one of the Panchavashanas, because the revelations of Kabir include the revelations of Kabir, the indications, the teachings of Kabir, the doha, the verses of Kabir contain some references to Paramdham, the abode of the Lord Supreme. It contains some indication of the love and eternal leelas between the cow maids and Sri Krishna. So Mahamati Prananath actually enlightens Chintamani about the real divinity of Kabir Sahib. And it is the same Kabir who said, "Chalate chalate pagat hake nagar raya navakosh, बीच में डेरा पड़ गया कबीरा किन तिले दोष. He is the one who says hadda hadda sab koi gaya behad kaya na koi hadda behad ke beech mein raya kabira so. It is the Kabir who said everybody has been to the perishable world. They have understood the reality of the perishable, but they have not gone beyond the perishable to the imperishable world. And between this perishable and the imperishable is where Kabir finds himself. He is the one who said, Ja ghar mein abala base, bahe prem ke pure das Kabira yon kahe shohar hamse do. So Kabir says, the house where the consorts of the Lord reside, that is the city of love, city of romance, divine romance. And Das Kabira says that home, that house, that Paramdham is beyond me. In Kabir has some verses about the eternal leelas between Sri Krishna and his consorts. Kabira Kabira kya kare chal dekh jamuna ke tir, ek gopi ki prema mein bah gaye kota Kabir. So Kabir tells his disciples that stop glorifying my name. Go to the banks of river Yamuna where you would find the eternal love of the cowmaids to Sri Krishna. And one gopi, one cowmaid's love is equivalent to millions of Kabir. Their devotion to Sri Krishna is way ahead of the devotion of Kabir. So there are so many followers of Kabir tradition to the world today. He tried to synthesize the teaching between that of the Vedic scriptures and Quran. So during his life, he was not as liked by both the Hindu scholars and the Islamic scholars, but as he talked about the humility, as he talked about the real devotion, the authentic devotion to the Lord Supreme, gradually he became famous to the world, and his teachings, his dohas, are often quoted in religious discourses. And his followers began to believe that he was the incarnation of the Lord Supreme. Mahamati Prananath gives him a higher position among other religious scholars, but he falls short in regarding him as the Lord himself, because as Kabir Sahib himself quotes, his devotion, his glory is incomparable, is way below the devotion of the cowmaids to Sri Krishna. And he himself says he is away, far away from the eternal abode of Paramdham. He has not realized the eternal. So as Mahamati Prananath explains all this about Kabir, his true devotion and true bhakti, Chintamani and his disciples are awestruck. They do not know, they do not realize how divine this new saint is, how transcendent his understanding is. He is quoting from the teachings of Kabir. He is explaining the limitations that Kabir himself expresses about his understanding of the beyond. Chintamani became surprised. He became awestruck. He didn't know what to say, what to do. And Mahamati Prananath and Chintamani engaged in extended discourse. And Mahamati Prananath, while returning, said these doha from Kabir, these revelations from Kabir. So it is as such. एक पलकते गंगा जो निकसी हो गयो चहुदिस पानी, वह पानी दुई पर्वत ढापी दरिया लहर समान। उड़ मक्खी तरुबर चढ़ बैठी बोलत अमृत बानी, वह मक्खी के मक्खा नाही, बिना पानी गर्भानी। तीन गर्भे गुण तीनों जाए, वह तो पुरुष अकेला, कहे कबीर या पद को बूझे, सो सतगुरु में चेला. So Mahamati Prananaji, before leaving the temple of Kabir, the temple of Chintamani Saint, he utters these verses from Kabir. And he says, according to this, those who could explain the real meaning of these verses, Kabir himself says, I will accept that person as my Satguru, as my spiritual master, and I'm willing to be the disciple of such person who could explain this concept. So the explanation is as such. So instantaneously, in no time, this Ganges came out, and the whole world was covered with water, whole universe was covered with water, and this water covered two great mountains, and it spread across. And up of that, a housefly came out, and she started talking beautifully. That housefly did not have her mate, but she gave birth to 3 kids, 3 children. That mate, that Purusha, is away, it's far away. And Kabira says, those who recognize that Purusha, that person would be my Satguru, and I would be the disciple. Prananaji explained that. It is about the creation of this world. As soon as Lord Akshar, the imperishable or infallible Brahma, Akshar Brahma, the creator of this world, finds himself in a dream. He finds himself as Narayana. The dreamy body of Akshar Brahma is Narayana. Narayana is whom Akshar Brahma finds himself as when he falls asleep today. And as soon as he finds himself as Narayana, then the world was covered with the water of this Maya, illusion, and forgetfulness. And the water spread so vastly that it covered 2 mountains. Mahamati Prananaji labels them as Paramdham and Akshardham. So as soon as the world was overwhelmed by this forgetfulness, this Maya, this illusion, then Paramdham and Akshardham, they were both lost. And from the desire, the makhi, the housefly, were created 3 children. So this moha, this attachment of Narayana to the world, also known as Prakriti, created 3 Purushas, namely Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. However, the Purusha, the Creator, the Lord Supreme, is far beyond them. They do not have an understanding. So Lord Brahmaji, Lord Vishnuji, and Lord Mahesha do not have an understanding of the Lord Supreme. So Kabira says, those who understand, the person who understands this secret of creation, how the world is overwhelmed by Maya, and the creator of this world, creator of multitude of universes like this, the Lord Supreme, those who understand Him and the process of creation, I would be the disciple of such divine personality, says Kabir. And Mahamati Prannaji explains these dohas of Kabir so clearly, and he leaves the temple of Chintamani. Chintamani has 500 disciples, and he keeps listening to the discourse, the divine revelations of Mahamati Prannaji, awestruck, all surprised by the divine intellect of Mahamati Prannaji. Mahamati Prannaji in the book of Kirantan says, Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra janame hui tino ki nara nirlepa kaamile pahi nari he paranahi akar. From Moha, from Maya, was born Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, the creator, the sustainer, and the destroyer of these 14 planes of this world. And Maya becomes the spouse of these three divine personalities. She is female, yet she does not have any form, any body. So that is Maya. So Mahamati Prannaji reveals the deepest secret of creation and the process of creation to Chintamani. How this world was created out of Maya, the process of the extension of creation from Narayana to Sesh Narayana to Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, and the 14 planes of this universe. Chintamani used to be educated in Kashi, one of the holy places in Vedic tradition, and one of his spiritual masters had told him that there would be someone who would come to your life and he would explain the meanings of these divine dohas, the teachings of Kabir. And the saint actually foretold him the actual date of that happening. On this particular day, you will find that saint in your door, explaining, revealing the secrets, revealing the true meaning of these dohas, of these verses. And as soon as Mahamati Prannaji left the temple of Chintamani, he went out and looked for his diary where he saw the actual date. And it was the day Mahamati Prannaji revealed this process of creation that Kabir Sahab had indicated in his verses. He realized that it was today, the date was today. The date given by his spiritual teacher in Kashi had turned out to be true. It was Mahamati Prannaji from whom he was getting this revelation. Mahamati Prannaji was busy in his discourse, and he had a place. He was living with Sundarsats. And whenever he engaged in discourse, people would just be fascinated by the revelations, the glory of his revelations and his discourse. It was so captivating. It was based on experience. He was too deep in his spiritual practice and pursuit. And here, Sundar Sadhji are engaged in his discourse. They are captivated by his discourse. And Chintamani, on the other side, started looking for Mahamati Prannaji because the date that he got, those verses would be revealed, and it happened through Mahamati Prannaji. So Chintamani ढूंढता फिरे कहाँ है उन साधु का ठोर. Started looking. He started asking people, where does that saint live? Who told me? Who revealed the teachings of Kabir to me? He started looking all night, and he found Mahamati Prannaji at the place of Natha Joshi, one of the Sundarsats. And Mahamati Prannaji was sitting on a seat, and he was engaging all these Sundarsats in the discourse. चर्चा के बखत में लगा चिंतामणि कदमों इन काजे. As soon as he finds Mahamati Prannaji, he greets him, he bows down to him, and starts listening to the discourse. Mahamati Prananaji is so engaged in his discourse, he does not realize that Chintamani is there. And Mahamati Prananaji was giving the discourse of Braja, Ras, Paramdham, and all these divine Leelas of Sri Krishna, and everyone was so attentively listening to his discourse. His Mahamati is speaking in such a high energy, in such high motivating manner. The spirit of Chintamani started gradually be awakened. He begins to realize that although he had more than 500 disciples, back then 400 years ago, more than 500 disciples, a lot of families were connected to him. And as he listens to the discourse of Mahamati Prananaji, the process of creation, the secrets of Bhagavata and all these scriptures, he begins to realize that the understanding that he was so proud of initially in the past, he feels that his intellect was nowhere near the intellect of Prananaji. He felt so empty. He felt so blessed listening to the divine revelation from Mahamati Prananaji. He started listening to the discourse. He continues going to the discourse of Mahamati Prananaji, first day, second day, third day. And Mahamati Prananaji realized that he should do something about awakening Chintamani. And he begins to criticize those saints and sages who claim to have known everything, who claim before their disciples that they can guide them towards eternality. Yet, they do not have the understanding of the beyond themselves. Mahamati Prananaji talks about those saints. गुरु गोविंद दोनों खड़े काके लागू पाए, बलिहारी गुरुदेव की जिन गोविंद दियो बताए. There are some saints who explain that when both the spiritual master and God come in front of a disciple, then we should choose the Guru because he is the one who connects the soul to God. And people explain it as such, Govinda se Guru adhika. Guru is of higher importance than the God himself. Govinda dare narakame Satguru leta chudaye. God puts the devotees in hell, and Satguru, the real Guru, the true spiritual master, gets them the heaven. So Mahamati Prananaji explains these verses as such. There are some saints and sages who ask their disciples to worship them instead of the Lord Supreme, instead of God himself. If we look at it carefully, if we look deeply, it is actually the Lord, it is actually God who sends these spiritual masters for the awakening of the souls. It is the Lord who gets everything happened for a disciple, for everyone for that matter. So actually the Lord is the spiritual master himself. In Satguru Maharaj lived the Lord Supreme Aksharatit Sri Raji Maharaj, and in Prananaji all the powers of the Lord Supreme resided. So Prananaji is none other than the Lord Supreme incarnate himself. Satguru Devchandraji is none other than Prananaji himself, the Lord Supreme himself. So it is the Lord Supreme who gets everything done, awakens the soul. So there are some saints who gets their disciple, his disciples worship him, but that is not the right thing to do. It is not a right thing when the disciple worships a guru instead of the God himself. So Chintamani, listening to all this criticism, realizes that Prananath is talking about himself. He had more than 500 disciples. He would perform miracles and magic, and people would worship him as God himself. So Chintamani comes to Prananath and says, "Oh Prananath, oh Guruji, you are right in your discourse. You are right about everything that you've said. But I'm here with my disciples. I'm here with my disciples. So can you tone it down a little bit? When I'm with you alone, you can criticize me as much as you want. But at least in front of these disciples, can you have my respect maintained among these people?" So Mahamati Prananath says, "Oh, right. Yeah, that's what I will do, Chintamani." So before Prananath went to bed, the divine revelation come to him. From the book of Kirantan, it is said, "Suno re sataki banjare, ek baat kahun samajhai, ya fand bachi, baji rachi maya ki tame sabako hiraya urajai, आटी आन के फांस लगाई ओवी उलटी दई उलटाई बंद पर बंद दिए विद विद की सो खोली किन हुन जाए." So this chapter was revealed to Mahamati Prananath. So the chapter says, "Oh, the aspirants of truth, oh, the seekers of truth, renounce ego, renounce the ego in you, and try to awaken your soul, because the world is full of maya, it's full of forgetfulness, and those who are stuck in it, they would continue to be stuck in it. So if you want to get out of this forgetful world, then you should try to enlighten yourself with the divine understanding." So this Bani was stuck in the door of Chintamani, and when Chintamani realizes that it was for him, it was revealed for the awakening of his soul, then he realizes that Prananath was right all along. So he says, "Aba maro kale kutte ko lathi sir upara, sab sevakon aage gaya me khali kachuna kabara." He realizes his mistake. He realizes that his ego was coming between him and the Lord Supreme, and he goes and talks to his disciples that me khali kachuna kabara, I do not have anything to offer you, my disciples. I'm going to the lotus feet of Prananath. I'm being his disciple myself. If your soul, if you want your soul be awakened, I would like to urge you to go along with me, come along with me to Prananath and be his disciples." And he goes to Prananath, touches his lotus feet, and announces that he renounced his worldly prestige and the Gurupan, the spiritual mastership that he had. He becomes the disciple of Mahamati Prananath. Dear Sundar Saji, thus Chintamani is awakened, and Mahamati Prananath awakens him with the divine mantra of Tartam. Kaya Sri Tartama Hinako Shava Sevakon Shameta. And many of his followers, most of his followers, submit to the lotus feet of Prananath because they realized the divinity. They realized the intellect of Prananath, the awakened consciousness of Prananath. And Mahamati Prananath awakens hundreds of Sundarsats at once with Chintamani. Dear Sundar Saji, that is why we say that Tartam, the divine understanding, has such an enlightening understanding that It reveals the secrets of both Vedic and Abrahamic scriptures, and those who come submitting to its understanding, they find a right path to awakening. So the awakening of Chintamani in Tatanagar was the discourse today. That was the topic of today's discussion. We'll talk about the awakening of other Sundarsats as Mahamati Prananath travels thousands of miles during his lifetime, awakening more than 5,000 souls of Paramdham, 5,000 Sundarsats. They are ready to give up their families, they are ready to give up their business and engage in deeper spiritual pursuit. That is what Mahamati Prananath is doing, and asking us to keep pursuing the deeper divine spiritual experiences in our life. We are saying we are from Paramdham, but we have failed to experience its glory. So Mahamati Prananath asks us to detach ourselves, just as he said to Jairam Kansara. He is asking us to keep engaging in our spiritual pursuits. Dear Sundar Sadji, with this, I conclude the discourse for today. Thank you all for patiently listening to this.